Welcome to the Battle Ready podcast, where we know that every single day is a battle. This show is about equipping you mentally, physically, and spiritually to win the daily battles. I want you to become totally free, whole, and powerful. It's time to step into your battles equipped and ready to win. I'm your host, Dr. Kaylee Judge. Let's get battle ready. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Battle Ready podcast. This is Dr. Kaylee Judge, and we are just scooting right along with these Enneagrams. We're on our last little bundle here. We're starting in with the Enneagram 7, and these are our super happy people, and they're enthusiastic, and they are the optimists. So good morning. We are doing this so bright and early this morning, this recording. So when you're listening, thank Angie an extra amount. She's in Arizona right now, which is 6 a.m. there. So super, super good to have you sacrifice your morning with us, and I'm thankful for you. So hi.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fantastic. I've been up for a few hours, so I'm good.
You always me like bright and early in the morning. I think you do have some 7 wing in you. So I think you telling you like, oh, she texted me 2 hours ago. I text her back.
Yeah, I'm a morning person, so sorry.
I used to be. And I think kids did me in.
So that's where I do a lot of my thinking and planning. And so if I don't text you when I'm thinking of it, then I'm not expecting a response. It's just I have to get it out of my head. Otherwise, it's going to be lost. All right. Yep. So tell me a little bit about these lovely 7s. Let's go with the basics first.
7s are fun. They are spontaneous and optimistic, very sociable, very outgoing, very talkative. They're always planning their next adventure. They are, they're just fun. They're the life of the party. My friend, I have a good friend that is a 7, and she is just so funny. We laugh all the time. The downside to a 7 is they have a hard time sitting in pain. They have a hard time allowing themselves to experience the hard things in life. So they'll just try to avoid. At their best, they slow down and they become grateful and receptive, thoughtful. They can be in the moment, but most of the time they're always looking for that next fun thing or that next thing that is going to give them that high. And sometimes they're looking for the actual high, but I just mean that energy high that they're kind of always looking for.
So they're the happy peppy. Are they sociable?
Very sociable, very loves to be around people. You know, I joke with my friend that's a 7, and we talked about my son that's a 7, and I tell her there's not another number on the Enneagram my son could be. There's just there's sometimes you can be with people, or someone could struggle with, gosh, I struggle with knowing my number with this one or this one. There's just not another number on the Enneagram that kid could be. You just know, he doesn't like to be or sit in uncomfortable things. School is hard for him, so he would just rather avoid and just do the things he's good at, do the things that he enjoys and things like that. And that's just him. It's just, he just would rather, but he's fun. He's always making a joke, always the one that is going to make a joke in a serious situation, and you're just like, what in the world? Like, where did that come from?
So I've got a friend who's an 8, and I think he's got a solid 7 wing, because he is the life of the party and he's hilarious, but he's also the challenger. And before, like, learning about this, he was like, no, I'm like a solid 8. I don't veer from that, but this is you're describing him. So that's kind of cool to hear that too. So.
Yeah. And the fun thing is that 8s can be, and obviously we'll talk about 8s next week, but 8s can be so serious, or seem so serious, and so, so adamant about not being challenged or things like that, that when they do utilize their 7, it does allow them to soften.
Probably.
And so that's
the
really cool thing. So so 7s are, they have this deep desire for fun and enthusiasm and fervor for life. But they don't always know how to sit in their pain. And so I've worked with multiple 7s before, in counseling, and one of the things that I will have them work on throughout a week is taking very small, and when I say small, I mean minutes. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not talking about sit in your pain for 30 minutes or sit in your pain for a half a day. I'm talking about, hey, like, can you sit and think about this, whatever this is for them? Can you sit and think about this for 3 minutes? Set a timer for 3 minutes and just think about it. And then you can go back to your gaming, or you can go back to your whatever, your fun thing. But you need to sit. And I'll even do that with my son sometimes, and he's only 12. Like, let's just think about this for a minute, or let's just be present in this moment that's not fun, that's kind of hard, for just a minute. And then you can go back to playing football.
So their
core desire is to be satisfied, to be content, to have all of their needs fulfilled. So there is this deep desire to feel safe and secure, but it's different than a 6. It's a 6's desire. We talked about that, is to feel safe and secure. They have a deep-seated need for security. That's a lot of the times for a 6, that's truly for their physical well-being. That's not so much for a 7. It's just they deeply desire to be, for everything to be good around them, and to feel like their security, that they're secure in life around them. Their deep-seated fear is to be limited, to be bored, incomplete, inferior. They have a deep fear of missing out. So they're going to be that friend that if you forget to add them on the group text, that is like pain for them. And really, you just accidentally forgot to add them on the group text, or they y'all are all going out to dinner and they just happen to not be around when you're talking about going out to dinner after a function, and they have this wound because they feel like they're being left out. They don't like to miss out on anything. My sweet friend we were after my friend's son's funeral. I've been in Phoenix for a funeral. And I was going to go to lunch the next day with one of my friends. And it's so funny how that 7, and my son even does it. So this is a grown woman. And then I see it even in my son. And she's like, perks up. And she's like, what? what are we doing? And we're like, Lori, we're going to lunch tomorrow. Do you want to come? Like it's just, they just don't want to miss out. It's not anything but just that fun loving spirit about them.
You know, it's funny because I get that way with like my close friends. I'm all, like, if people that know me really well, like if we're at a function, somebody stands up to go somewhere. It's like, where are you going? What are you doing? You know, like, why are you leaving this little small group to go out and do something else? Or they're maybe just going to the bathroom, but it's like, I want to know where's everybody going? So that's funny.
Like, is there something more fun going on
Yeah.
that I need to know about?
Yeah.
Like the bathroom. What? Can I go? Yeah. So they're just super, super fun people. And they have a self-image of wanting to be seen as spontaneous and happy, free spirit, optimistic, energetic. They really are going to be that person that the glass is half full, because they can't really stomach or they don't really want to stomach that it could be half empty. So so I would describe them at times as people that live in a little bit of denial. Mm-hmm. And I've even seen this in the tragedy that we've been going through with our best friend. Is there tends to be in life tragedy a little bit of denial, and it is their way of surviving. In tragedy is, if I just don't sit in it and I don't meditate on it and I don't, then it'll be fine and it won't be real. So that's a hard one. And, you know, one of my, you know, and they tend to, we think, you know, as we study and things like that, the Enneagram, like 7s are more prone to addiction. Sadly and unfortunately, probably 4s being the next prone to addiction. I know we talked about their deep emotion that they get into when we talked about a 4, but 7s can be more prone to addiction simply because of the idea of needing to escape whatever they might be going through. So I was talking to a friend, and you know, they, you know, obviously marijuana is big in our culture today and things like that. And this generation of kids just really don't see an issue with it. And this teenager was asking me, you know, what my thoughts were. And I said, here's the deal. At the end of the day, right, wrong, or indifferent on it being a drug or whatever, is that if you never learn to cope with life, then you're always going to be looking for something to help you cope. And that's the problem that I ultimately have as a counselor, right? You want to teach someone to learn to cope in a healthy way and to learn to face life head on. And 7s, more than any number on the Enneagram, struggle with that.
It's hard.
They have a really hard time. Yeah. Yeah. They have a really hard time.
Especially probably when it's even like socially accepted, so it's not a problem.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And in this culture, you know, we obviously see that. We see a very, very socially accepted, I'm reading a book right now called Breathing Underwater by Richard Rohr. Richard Rohr is a very big Enneagram guy, but this is actually not even an Enneagram book. It's actually the spiritualities of the 12 steps that I'm reading right now. And he talks about that very thing. He talks about the social acceptance, one, of addiction in general, but then he talks about just what is blatantly seen as addiction, and then how we really are all addicted in our own right, or in our own sense, for whatever it is, food, you know. And my husband would tell you her big struggle is food, but that's extremely socially accepted, right? So it's not seen as addiction. And so she really battles that, and she really struggles with that in emotional pain. What does she turn to? She turns to food. And a lot of people do.
Yeah, and I think that can be something that's you know, we could go on a whole tangent about that with
Another podcast, right?
Yeah, because you know, when we think about addiction, we put these people into a category of, okay, so it's drugs and alcohol, right? And that's just not the full case.
No. And so you see, especially in a world of, right, so like strong Christianity, if we have a strong Christian, well, I feel justified in my addiction, whatever my addiction is, food, my own ideology, my own ideas. So, you know, he talks a lot about that, how we can get addicted to our own ideas, which correlates to the Enneagram, right? We get so stuck and addicted to our own ideas that we can't relate to other people and come outside of our own lens or our own number, right? To see someone else. But it is interesting how even believers or Christians find their thing that they're comfortable with being addicted to, because it's not drugs, it's not alcohol, or whatever. But you're right, that could be a whole podcast in and of itself. But even we're seeing, even in the conversation that I was having with this person even this week about the, you know, marijuana and, you know, things like that, is that even that is becoming more and more and more socially accepted. So we see this culture that really does not know how to cope and deal. And I try to work with my son on a daily basis, understanding his personality, knowing his personality. And this is where I feel like parenting, using the Enneagram in parenting and using the Enneagram in relationships and things like that can be so helpful, is understand that your child is a 7, and that they're going to struggle with dealing and coping with hard things in life. So give them tools now to be able to, and it can be simple things, but give them tools now, make them sit in it now, so that when they're 16 and 18 and 20, they go, okay, I don't like it, but I can do it.
That's good. That's good stuff right there.
Yeah, girl.
Okay,
yeah,
let's talk about the wings.
Wings. Okay. So the wings of a 7 are going to be your 8 and 6. So just like always, just a quick overview of wings if you're just tuning in, because this is your number. We understand wings, and this is the way I teach and I train. I truly believe wings to be, so your wings are on either side of your number. Your number is your home space or your core space. And I describe it often a couple of different ways. So your number being a hard-boiled egg, and your numbers on either side of you being your salt and pepper to flavor your number. Or I also like to say that your wings add layers to your number, which gives us just more layers and layers of our personality. It makes us and creates deeper levels of who we are. And so I truly believe we have access and the ability to tap into, if you will, both of our wings. It's just our natural tendency often is to tap into one more than the other. So the 7 with the 6 wing is going to be more, they're going to be very loyal. They're going to be endearing, responsible, more responsible, because they have just enough of that fear in them. You know, we talked about the 6 last week, of that what if mentality sitting on the edge of their seat. They're going to be more outgoing. relationship oriented, because 6s are very relationship oriented, playful, childlike, but they're going to have that streak of anxiety inside of them. That kind of sits on the edge of their seat asking what if. I would say that my oldest, my 12-year-old, very much taps into his 6 more than he taps into his 8, which, what would that look like? They're more free, they're passionate, they're very adventurous, they're very strong-willed, because not only does that strong 7 not want to be kept from having fun, then you get that 8 wing inside of them, and they don't want you to keep them from having fun, and they don't want you to control them either. So they have that strong 8 wing inside of them. They seek intensity. They're leaders. They're definitely leaders, and so they lead well. And so that 7 with that 8 wing is going to be very strong and a strong leader in that sense. So, but the cool thing is we can tap into both of our wings on any given day. So I always encourage people to look at their wings and study their wings and go, how can I add layer to who I am by understanding my wings better? And I always think that just is a growth piece for our personality, because really it gives us more insight also into other people and how other people think and see things as well.
Yeah, that's moving into the 8 wing. It's an interesting place to live in the 8s. Turning into the challenger, it's funny, like somebody to have to go from being funny and enthusiastic to being serious and challenging and, the pusher of the rock up the hill. It's big.
Right. And that fun 7, the cool thing about, that 7 that really can tap into that 8 is that fun loving, adventurous, always ready for that next adventure, can tap into that 8. And we know about the 8, and obviously we'll talk more about it next week, but we know about the 8, that 8 is a strong advocate for other people. They are very much about justice and seeing justice served and things like that. So they can reel in their almost selfish desire to always have fun and things like that. They can reel that in a little bit and think of others outside of their self more often when they're tapping into that 8, because 8s have a way about them to feel empathy and to put themselves in another person's shoes, whereas a 7 doesn't slow down in the fun things of life or the adventure part of life long enough sometimes to do that. So when they tap into that 8 wing, it's really cool to see how fun they can be and how empathetic and serving they can also be. So it is really, really cool to see a 7 slow down long enough to do that.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about lines and arrows. And so a 7, when they are in a stressful state, they start to exemplify the qualities of a 1. And when they're in their growth states, they start to exemplify the qualities of a 5. So I'm going to have you just explain the lines and the arrows and really like what that shift means.
Yeah. So as I say all the time, this is where I feel like people start to get a little overwhelmed with the Enneagram, because it's a lot. And it's like, okay, we have we have wings and lines and arrows and this number and that number. Just know that and understand that it's not that your number all of a sudden changes to this number or this number. You're not changing and evolving as your personality. What you're doing is you're taking on those qualities. And the reason we want to understand that about ourselves is the piece of self-awareness. It allows us to be self-aware. You become keenly aware of when you are stressed or when you are acting in your stress. But then you also become keenly aware of when you're kind of venturing into that growth space too. When you start to act in these other different ways or exemplify these other things. And so it's not to be overwhelming. It's just to be self-aware. And we talk a lot in EQ or, emotional intelligence about self-awareness, but just talking about EQ is not good enough. It's like, how do you experience EQ? And the Enneagram really does give us a path to that. It gives us a path to understanding. So the two big parts of EQ is understanding ourselves and our emotions, but also understanding others and the emotions of others. And so this is really a roadmap to higher, more explicit EQ that we can experience. And so when a 7 is experiencing stress, and I tell people all the time, this can be a stressful moment. Like you just pissed me off and I'm having a stressful moment, or this can be a stressful season of life, right? We're coming out of a stressful season of life. Like, things are stressful, and maybe it's your marriage, or maybe it's, work, maybe it's you're in a season and maybe you're in a moment. But a 7 will exemplify what we call the low side or the average to unhealthy qualities of a 1. They become very critical. They start to, so that fun-loving, everything's always positive, the glass is always half full, all of a sudden shifts, and they become very finger-pointing. They become a perfectionist. They become very critical. They have a critical spirit of themselves and others. They become very cynical. They blame others for keeping them from having fun. And so they just get this very critical spirit about them. So when a 7 starts to act in that way, it's almost like we can use that as a yellow light. Like, okay, hold on. Like, what's wrong right now? Like, what we go back to when in the intro video or the intro podcast that we talked about, that I talked about, is what's being threatened right now. Is it we talked about the three biological needs, right? Love and affection, safety and security, power and control. Like, okay, yellow light, what's being threatened right now? And kind of start to work through that. But that takes self-awareness. And understanding that you're acting in that way. So then their growth point, or, that 7 that's always outgoing and spontaneous and all of those things, as they grow, they exemplify the high side or the healthy qualities of a 5, where they can they can think more logically. They become more cerebral. They can spend alone time and enjoy it. And 7s don't often do that, but they can be more disciplined and wise in their decision making.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Those 5s. I like those 5s. They're sneaky.
Fives are interesting, and it's really interesting when you dig into the 5 of understanding a 5. because they disconnect so easily from their emotions. And then sevens are, it's interesting that they go to a 5 in growth, because sevens are so out there and 5s hoard their energy and their emotion. And so to see a 7 really grow and tap into those high qualities of a 5 is really is really a journey.
So let's talk about now, my favorite part of it is, how do you be in a relationship with a 7, whether it be an intimate spousal relationship, a friendship relationship? I know that you were talking about one of your friends being a 7, and so you'll have some personal experience to go along with this, but I think it's just exciting to hear, like, okay, my friend's a 7, now how do I deal with them?
Yeah, so one thing it's important to understand as other numbers, really quick, about a 7 is a 7 is always going to try and help you see the positive side of things. Always. They really are always going to try. Like my sweet friend, Lori, will always, in a negative or hard situation or hard space, she'll always try to help you see the positive. And a lot of numbers on the Enneagram, 4 being one of them, they don't receive that very well. And it's because 7s don't want to sit in the pain. So let me give you all the positives that you can take from this so that we can think about something positive instead of sitting in the pain. And for a 4, for instance, they kind of see that as you're minimizing what I'm going through. And so I say that, I tell you that on this podcast, for those that aren't 7s but do life with 7s, just understand that their heart really is pure in that. Their heart really is in a good place with that. But then on the flip side, in the unhealth of a 7, it can be a little selfish on their part. I don't want to sit in the pain with you. So let's look at some positives that you can. So if and when you call them out on that, like, just do it in a gentle way. Just do it in a gentle way of going, you know what, I really appreciate where you're wanting to take this, but right now this is hard and I'm just coping and I'm dealing. And if you could just do that with me, that would be great. So for a 7, they need positive encouragement and affection. I would say a lot of 7s are words of affirmation or quality time. I'm not saying all of them are. Quality time would give fun and adventure, and words of affirmation gives, obviously that positive feedback that they're looking for a lot. They enjoy companionship, so just like quality time. So share companionship with them. Be engaged in stimulating conversation, laughter, fun, and spontaneous activities. If you're a planner, and we have in our group of friends in Phoenix, we have quite a few planners. So we just have to kind of roll with Lori sometimes. Like not everything has to be planned, and so those planners have to kind of take that planning to the back seat sometimes with a 7, and just be willing to be spontaneous just every now and then. Listen to their stories, listen to their grandiose stories. They love to feel like they are entertaining you. So just listen and have fun with them. The interesting thing is, especially in like a spousal relationship with a 7, sometimes that gets old. And everything always having to be fun gets old. And so when you do life with, and it doesn't even have to be in a spousal relationship, even in friendship, it's like, okay, life is not always roses and rainbows. Like you just almost get to a breaking point sometimes with sevens of going, life's not always roses and rainbows. Like just accept it. So just finding ways to communicate that in not such a harsh way for sevens is really important. Enjoy life to the full, enjoying, doing new things, not getting stuck in a rut of doing the same old thing. For me and my husband, we are perfectly content on date night doing the same thing every date night. Go to dinner, go to a movie, go get coffee. Like our date nights are pretty what a 7 would call boring. Mm-hmm. But for us, we love it. A 7 is going to want to know everything there is to know in the city that they live in. They're going to want to experience all the things that wherever they live offers and things like that. And so just be willing to experience those things with them. On the flip side of the coin, 7s need to also understand that the people they're doing life with may not be that way. Mm-hmm. And so obviously always in relationships, it's a give and take. And so you have, while your spouse or your friend or your, partner has to be willing to experience those things with you, you have to also be willing to experience the mundane of life with other people.
Which is not always fun.
There are actually people that enjoy the mundane of life.
Yeah, which is maybe where they would even slip into that 5 or that even 8. Like as an 8, like I like to be very structured,
And even tapping into the 6 of the more cautious, the slower pace of life and things like that. So 7s definitely have the ability. It's their being willing to experience it and sit in it and do it. That is really, really the important piece to that.
All right. So we just covered a lot about the 7s. Is there anything else you want to run through?
There's hard things about being any number. But some of the hard things about being a 7 is for them, there's often never enough time to get it all done or to experience it all. So they struggle with staying focused and finishing a task. So in the workplace, a 7 is a visionary. They have big vision for life. But what they also need to understand, what they also need to really realize, they need people around them to implement those visions, because they can have very grandiose visions for, maybe they're working on a project, maybe they are in charge of creative design or creative thinking in their workplace. They're good at things like that. They are good. The problem is they have so many grandiose ideas that they don't always have the ability to or the internal tools to bring those things together. So they really need the people around them, the 3s around them, the 8s around them to go, okay, this is the step-by-step process by which we've got to get this done. Because 7s don't do that well. 7s are not going to come up with the ABCD to get this vision that's in their head actually implemented. Mm-hmm. So they struggle with that a little bit. So they tend to get caught up in the grand visions instead of the details. And so they often feel limited or restricted in many one-on-one relationships. So sometimes they can do themselves an injustice because they don't slow down long enough to experience true intimate relationship. And so when they are able to grow and get into that healthy five space, fives don't love lots and lots of, they're more introverted. They can focus in on one relationship and be completely content in that. And so the growth space for a seven is really, really intriguing to me, to really see a seven grow in that healthy five is phenomenal. It's really phenomenal because it seems like such a stark difference in what their core personality engages in.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. When I'm, to kind of rein this in and bring it full circle, I'm talking to my clients, and I'm able to coach them and counsel them from a spiritual standpoint. To some of my clients I can, and some of them I can't. It's especially with my sevens, it's so important to understand, and people, how do we grow? What is the spiritual answer for my number or whatever? And I tell people all the time, the antidote for each number's fear, the antidote for each number's insecurities is always comes back to the foundation of your relationship with Christ. But that looks different for every single number. So for seven, understanding that they do not have to, sevens are seeking something all the time. So when we think about that, we think about, I'm seeking something all the time to fill this sensation that I want to have. And so when we understand that the seeking is always going to be there, if I do not learn to sit in the presence of God and find my peace in Him, then I'm going to wake up day in and day out with this void of seeking. And so it's so important for a seven to slow down, journal, and do some things that allow their that seeking to stop and for them to just be.
Mm-hmm.
Super important.
Sevens, we love you. We love to have fun with you, and I look forward to learning more. There's so much more to learn about it. I mean, we only have 45 minutes to an hour on these episodes. So go dig into some things. Reach out to Angie if you have questions about anything. She is fully prepared to answer questions, help you through things, and get you moving in the right direction with other things. We look forward to being a part of your journey of growth, whether it be mentally, physically, or spiritually. If you would like more info on coaching, text the word BATTLE to 33777. We can set up a discovery call. Make sure you go through the steps of the text messaging that happens there. So Angie, I love you. Thank you for sacrificing your morning for us. I really, really appreciate it. We'll get this out, and people will be getting their lives transformed and changed because of you. So we thank you guys. We'll talk to you next week.
Sweet.